It was a big year for us for sure. I think the business as a whole said it's time to put audiences first. We defined a lot of different segments and we wanted to be consistent across channels, which we've always kind of said we were doing, but this was really the year where we brought some big changes to actually make that happen and put our money where our mouth is in a pretty big way. So one of the first things that we've done that was a pretty radical change for Bank of America. I mean, they've been a player in the TV space for decades, in the very traditional upfront way. But this year we actually decided to take the leap of faith and make the move to calendar year upfront planning. So it's a pretty big shift. Obviously, for folks that are a little more digitally minded, it seems pretty common sense. Why wouldn't you plan January through December, since that's typically how we're briefed? That's just not the way that the broadcast system has worked, and we decided that model just wasn't suiting our needs anymore as a business. It wasn't allowing us to be as strategic as we could because we had to make pretty big and sizable decisions in the TV space before we had any idea who our audience was going to be for the next year, what our products were going to be. And so we ended up kind of force-fitting things into plans that just didn't speak to what we were trying to do as a business. So with this change to calendar year, it allows us to get briefed at the same time as every other channel. We can plan against the same audiences across channel and start to get a lot more strategic with what we're bringing to market for our clients.
So what does that change? What does that change the equation of the relative value of what's going on this week with the traditional upfront?
So it's interesting. I think, for us, we're definitely moving away from buying on a program by program basis, but I also think that the upfronts are changing the tone a little bit. Yes, they're talking about their programming slate, but they're also talking about their advanced ad offerings. They're talking about video on demand. They're talking about digital. So all of those things start to help us figure out which publishers have the same values as us, which publishers strategically are heading in the same direction, and it gives us a chance to then have a conversation on a deeper level, actually maybe build some things together, and then by the time January rolls around, we've got a little bit more customized plan, but we use this week to at least identify who the key partners are for us in the space. And I think that's one of the biggest changes for us is, we had a lot of discussion. Do we still come to the upfronts? Is it still something that's valuable? And at the end of the day, we decided that that's really the value for us, is to find out what the strategy is for each different network for the year ahead, and then start to pinpoint the players where we really want to go big with and start to build something more custom together.
Cool. And we hear a lot about OpenAP, yes. Audience buying. What does audience buying mean to you, and what's the significance of this OpenAP collaborative?
Yeah, I think it's been a big year. Obviously you've got folks like Turner and Viacom and Fox that have always been pushing ahead with their various products in the audience space, and that's something we've really gravitated towards because we know that they have the same interests and values that we do, really trying to hone in on those audiences and make it a better experience. So we've definitely dove headfirst with those guys, and we're just starting to, on a small scale then, within each network, optimize our schedule, pick programming and networks that index more highly against our audience. What OpenAP does is gives us a way to do that on a more scalable basis, because it's a lot of work to go to each individual publisher and start to build these things out, whereas in digital, you go to your DSP, you go to your DMP, you match the two together, and you're pretty much good to go. Obviously that's an oversimplification, but it's a lot easier to standardize and scale. So what OpenAP does is gives us an opportunity to do that in the linear space. It's a small step, but it's a really important step, and I think having those three big guys on sets the tone for the industry, and I think at this point that may be the biggest value that we have from it, is to at least have some of the major networks saying we hear you and this is what we want to do. I think what makes it a little bit tricky to engage with from an ad perspective is it's essentially a consortium of three separate teams. There isn't a centralized hub yet that actually manages OpenAP, the platform, the conversations, and I think that's where it's going to be hard for brands, especially brands that haven't been in the audience space yet in linear, to really figure out how to navigate and use OpenAP to its full advantage. So that's something we've been talking really deeply with all of the publishers that are currently involved in, is how can we help? How can we push it along? How can we get more publishers on board? And what do they need from the advertiser and brand community to start to establish a voice and help guide them on how to build the product in a way that's going to be most valuable for us? Because we think that's going to kind of set the tone for other brands engaging with it as well. It's streamlined in that you can use one audience, but it still goes to each individual publisher, gets planned using their tools, and you have to go to each publisher with your contract. You can't just go to AP. It doesn't function in the same way a DSP might in digital, and that's going to be something that's tricky, I think, for a lot of brands to wrap their heads around, but it's definitely a huge and very, very important sign, I think, in the space.